Welcome to No Clip, the podcast that's like a book club for people who don't think that books reward them enough for being good at them. I'm Chad Ruthermond.
And I'm Andy Kinnick.
And today, we're going to be talking about Sacrifice, a game that was developed by Shiny Entertainment, published by by Mark Teal. Good job, Mark. Gold star. And released in 2000 on Windows and Mac OS.
But first, if you give us a like or a rating, it would be greatly appreciated.
Hit that like button. Sacrifice is it's a real-time strategy game, and we have reached the very early this year, within 1 week of each other, the Fanbruary dichotomy. Because the first game we did was a game that we were both like, well, you know, we maybe, if we had known about this game before, we might talk about it. Because it's a game that seems like something that we would do. It's something that drew our attention almost immediately. And then this is an RTS game. We have a spreadsheet for Fanbruary and on that we vote each of us, like, how likely are we to talk about this game. This is the first game, I think, in over both years that has just scored a 1 from both of us. We were like, no chance are we going to play this outside of February. And here we are, talking about it in February. Yeah.
Yeah, so I don't like RTSs.
Sam?
Personally. I don't think that they're, like, bad or anything. They're just super not my thing. But I do think it's one thing that's interesting about this game, though, is I think if I had seen it, it would be like a in the back of my brain thing, like, oh, maybe we should do that for the podcast because it seems really weird. And one thing that makes it's weird that my brain works this way or my preferences are like this, but the fact that you control a character in third person makes it much more appealing to me. It kind of blows my mind how much more.
Yeah. So I have played. It's interesting because I agree with you. I think that the idea of controlling a character and having direct impact on the fights with your own little dude is actually something that does make the game more appealing to me. However, my RTS background, like the games that I have played, I know 100% that games where you control a character are the games that I hate the most. Because the other RTS games that I've played in my life are what most people would say, similar to the way that we are with adventure games. I think if you're an RTS fan, everything that we say is going to be like woefully unprepared. And because we're just not well versed in the genre. We're not the people to be talking about this in an objective way. But subjectively speaking, I've played like the granddaddies of the genre. I've played StarCraft 2, a couple of the Red Alert games, and what's the fantasy one? It's weird that I can't.
Fantasy one.
Well, there's like the one where you type in cheesesteak Jimmy's and it gives you food.
Oh, I don't know.
Yeah, I can't remember the name of it. Somebody heard that and was like, "You're an idiot." Of course, it's this. But it's not coming to me right now. We'll eventually think of it.
Yeah.
But I've played those games, and the legacy of Sacrifice is very clearly more a Pikmin or Brutal Legend, where it's a game where you have an immediate player character that you're controlling, and then you create units, and those units go do all the grunt work for you. But I don't know. These games, they do seem more appealing to me as well. It's just like it feels more like an action game, something that I'm familiar with, and less clinical, I guess, than like the top-down.
Yeah, it feels more like similar to other games where like you play a character, like you feel very disconnected, or at least I know I do, from like what's happening when you're like an abstracted like god that is like, you know, sending all the troops to their deaths.
Yeah,
you know,
Good and Evil is one of them, but it isn't the one I'm thinking of.
Is it Warcraft?
It's not War. I've never played Warcraft, weirdly.
Yeah, I never thought of the comparison to Pikmin, even though it seems like an obvious one. But yeah, like I have no idea. Yeah, as you're implying, I have no idea if this game's actually any good or not, because like I have less experience than you do with real-time strategy games. I played like a couple probably at like a friend's house as a kid and don't remember what they were.
Right.
That's what I'm working with here.
That's fun. I've played a lot of campaigns essentially, and I don't know that I finished any of them because it is just like it's a genre that is very fiddly with its mechanics. And it's not one that I have a lot of experience in. And the combination of that is if I didn't spend a huge amount of time with them, which I never did, then they are too hard to play. And this game is not different. I was not able to complete this game because it became too hard for me. And I chalk it up to inexperience with the genre. I also chalk it up to a limited time that I actually had to play it. Had I spent more time with it, maybe I could have gotten through. It seems like this game is a little bit easier than other games in the genre, at least to my knowledge. But that did not stop it from hard walling me, like 2/3 of the way in.
Yeah, one thing, at least from my perspective, that makes it kind of difficult, or at least it made it difficult for me, is like is the third person perspective. Even though I like it a lot, it can make it kind of hard to like split up your units and like to select things, and like if something happens like across the map, it can be really hard to like get to it.
Yeah.
And it makes things more cumbersome, where they would be like the pulled back like top down kind of camera you usually have is what RTS is used for a reason.
Right.
And it is interesting to see a game tackle it, but I think more changes would need to be made to make it work, which is why I kind of wish I had played Pikmin to like make some comparisons, but I can't.
Yeah, there's an interesting sort of push and pull with this game. To go on like just talking about mechanics, because I think it's sad, but it is going to be the thing that we have the least to talk about. Like we can talk about some stuff with these mechanics, but we're going to hit a wall on them and be like, hopefully that's enough for you to understand what the game's about. Let me tell you about Nigel Thornberry. This game has like a couple of different mechanics that I envision as being there to make the third person thing more palatable. I do want to address the first thing though, which is managing troops, what they call micro in the genre, like your micromanagement. It is hard, impossible, maybe even, because the only way to do it from the third person camera, from my estimation, is to get all of the ones of a certain kind. So you can do that by double clicking and then moving them over here. And then just repeating that until you have manageable groups. And by the time that you've separated them out, you lost the game. Yeah. Somebody has assaulted you and murdered.
You can't really do it on the fly very well.
Right. So you have to end up using the minimap, but the minimap does not differentiate between what fucking unit you're trying to select. Like, I don't want to send my 1 HP mana battery characters out to go assault a fucking encampment. Like, I want the tank man to go do that. And there's no way to tell it on the minimap to do that. And I couldn't figure out if you could deselect something and like leave the rest of the group alone. Because you shift click to put another guy in your selection. But like it eventually got way out of hand for me and I just couldn't deal with it. Like I there were definitely times, especially early on, when I could get away with it. I was just like putting everyone and just saying guard me and then just running my face into stuff and being like, they have to attack it because that's the command I gave.
I would pick the circle formation and then have everybody guard me.
Yeah, I would do
pretty often. Yeah.
Mana whores in phalanx formation, so they'd be behind me. and then everybody, literally every other thing, skirmish formation in front. That was like my go-to, and that's when I felt like I was like, I'm getting this. I know what skirmish formation is, obviously. And then I was trounced many times.
Yeah, the mini-map feels like it is stapled in there, like to try to address the gripes that we have, but yeah, it just doesn't work.
No.
Yeah, it's like, oh, like give them the ability to like have a bigger view of the battlefield, but it's like the size of a, what is it, a silver dollar?
Oh, like it's a little bigger than a regular.
It's bigger than a quarter, but like it's still pretty small. Yeah, like the size of like a pill bottle cap or something.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's like it's in like trying to divide your troops on the fly. Like you'd have to like stop and like zoom in on the mini map and like to be like, okay, now these are the guys I'm trying to select, and like it doesn't lend itself, because like the third person perspective, I think like you said, kind of makes it feel a little bit more actiony, and it lends that pacing to the gameplay. You're running around,
right,
actively doing stuff. So like anytime you need to like reevaluate and do the strategy part, you have to like stop, and that really they don't gel.
No, not so much, especially like in what is this? I mean, I guess that's where the challenge of the game's supposed to come from, right? It's like you're in an active battlefield. You have to be able to manage the stuff and do that at the same time. But the camera is not letting you do it. The camera zooms in and out, but it's like it's not nearly enough, because I've never had it not all the way zoomed out. That was just the only way that I could play the game. And even then I found myself being very imprecise with everything that I was trying to tell them to do. It was a lot to keep in mind. Like this is coming from, I don't know if this is a technical privilege, but it is a privileged position to be in, to play games predominantly developed for a modern audience. Because when you go back to these games that were more targeted at a specialist audience of people who have played Command and Conquer, that's the game I was trying to think of, before, and I come back to it having virtually no experience and then expecting to be able to do anything. I couldn't remember whether to left or right click stuff like half the time. I was like, it's one of these or those. So I hold the right click. That's how I go into skirmish formation. I got that part down.
Yeah, I'm glad that wasn't just me.
No.
Like when I was going to like attack stuff, I would I think it's left click, and I would right click all the time.
Right.
Or vice versa.
Yeah, I think it actually is right click.
Well, whichever one it is, I would do the wrong one. Like,
it's just proving our point. Neither of us are really sure.
Yeah. So yeah, one thing though, I really like a lot of the ideas on paper though. Like I think this game has a lot of cool concepts. Running around the world and having to like find the other wizard, if there's another wizard in the level, the other wizard's like shrine or whatever it's called, and like you have to desecrate it like by sacrificing one of your units. And it's like really cool. Like all the little guys come out and they like do this like creepy like tribal sacrifice dance, and then you go kill the wizard and they can't respawn.
Right.
There's like a cool just feel to it, because like this game also has a multiplayer mode, so like I think that those influenced each other's design. I think like having another character like on your level running around who's also summoning units, and like you can run into them and have like a fight like in the middle of the level. It feels really cool and like fast paced and interesting.
Yeah, it's a really cool system in my opinion, because it's like if you play StarCraft and if you play it like you're playing Sacrifice and are a big idiot and just take all of your troops and walk away from your base, and somebody just comes up and fucks your shit while you're gone, you've lost that game. Not technically, they have to go like kill everything or complete an objective, but in this game you can take all your shit, run away, run into somebody else, die, and then that's a setback. You go back, you can rebuild. As long as they haven't desecrated your shrine, you still have that opportunity. And I think that the game most likely was made with that multiplayer as its focus. And then the single player is just an extension of the multiplayer with AI opponents, essentially. At least a lot of the levels sort of boil down to that. And it's interesting. They even demonstrate sort of like team ups. Like you can have two people on the same side, or like people representing three different gods, but two of them are allied in this instance. And a lot of that stuff is very cool and works well. And we'll get into it later, because I think there's more to talk about here. But it also has that, like, the way that you unlock things is by what god that you choose as you go through the story. And I think that's a really interesting mechanic as well. There's a lot of stuff here that builds a very compelling argument. And the game is even sold on being like the simple version of an RTS. But it was still a little bit too much.
Yeah, like it's hard to know, like it's hard to like get in depth, as we keep saying, as we're like baby RTS noobs. But yeah, like, there were times where I would go into levels, like I don't remember what level it was, maybe like the 4th or the 5th one, and I picked Stratos as the god, and he was like the neutral party between these other two, and it was like, hey, you know, do this for me and we can like maybe settle this blah blah blah. And I would go in and I would like, you know, like get my, you know, mana whores, and I'd go and I'd set up the first mana fountain thing, and then I'd like summon my troops, and then I would just like start walking, and it would be like defeated, like within like 3 minutes, and I was like, what the fuck am I supposed to do? Like there were times where like it really felt like the challenge felt like, or like, even that's an extreme example, but there would be times when I was like up in like combat and I would just like get destroyed, and it just like, and then like I would like maybe do like a couple things like different, like just, and by that I just mean like summon a different like number, like
right.
Percentages of each like different type of unit, and then I would go and it would like work out okay. Yeah, so like I don't know. I lack the, I guess, the nuance to really know like what it takes to like crest the hill, like get over the hump, jump the hurdle to like get into the game.
Yeah.
So I never quite did.
Yeah, and I think there's and this might verge a little bit too far into design in terms of like what we're actually talking about right now. But one of those things that like, now, I don't know if I had a situation where I lost before I like saw anyone else.
Yep, and it happened like 5 times in a row to me. So I don't know what was going on.
Yeah, like maybe you just had to get somewhere fast. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
But one of the things that I kept running into as an issue is that like I didn't feel like the utility of each of the units was really explained very well. They get like a blurb when the first time that you summon one.
Yeah, from your familiar.
But the actual, like, in combat, I don't know who's doing what. I know that ground units can attack flying units.
Archers and flying units can attack flying units.
Yeah, so you have to have...
That's intuitive enough.
Yeah, that one makes sense. That's Magic the Gathering.
Yeah.
Does it have reach? It can probably hit a bird. But then, like, I would get these other units that seemed pretty good, and then other units that didn't seem like they did anything at all. There's a thing that I had from very early on that was called, like, the lava tick, and it was a little bug. I mean, it was huge. It was a giant bug. And it shot a laser beam. And according to the description, the laser beam drained energy from its target. I could not see this happening in action, so it just seemed like it fired a non-damaging laser beam every once in a while. And so it was weird, because it was like, is this doing something and it's just imperceptible to me? Or should I stop using souls on this and instead use them somewhere else? And it made, like, every fight that I was in, like, was a little confusing, because I didn't know exactly what to do. And I found that, like, I would want to cast damaging spells myself to try and make up for not understanding how the units worked. And that's never really a good option.
You are supposed to do that, like, some.
Yeah.
Like your units attack, like fight the enemies while you like blast to the structure with lightning bolts or whatever. Like
Okay,
that sort of thing.
Gonna break down the structure with your lightning
Yeah,
bolts.
or you could split your units if you want to, like that way. There's like multiple ways to approach it.
But that does require you to split your units,
Yeah.
which you're not gonna be able to do.
Yeah.
Because you're me.
I think that's if you're good at the game, you could do that.
You could probably do that. Yeah.
Yeah, but and once again, like the third person camera makes it difficult to like, because like I kept summoning like just basic ranger units, and like I never really like noticed what they were doing on the battlefield. It seemed like they died the most, but it made sense. I was like, are these guys any good? I guess I'll keep using them. Like they don't seem like they're bad, but like it is kind of hard to tell like what you're saying, like what each unit is good at.
Right. I actually went the longest time without, and I might be showing my ass a bit here. I was like, I don't even have ranged units. Like the way that I set up, I didn't think that I had gotten any. And I think maybe I did actually, but I couldn't tell because they weren't marked as like a ranger.
Yeah, like the icon, they had like their arms like this and then a little bow in their hand.
Is that for anything that is a ranger?
I think so.
Okay.
And that's the exact kind of detail that you wouldn't notice.
Right. Well, I noticed it in the tutorial.
Yeah.
When there were people with bows.
Well, I know there are
but I had flame minions.
Yeah. Depending on which gods you pick, you get access to different units.
Right.
So it might have been different for you.
Yeah, and I'm not sure if those units had a range capability or not. But then just the order of things that I was that I did things in, it just felt like I never had them. I remember being in fights where there were birds and they were fighting my birds, and I was just like, well, I'll just let them do that and I'll leave and go do something else. And it mostly worked out for me as far as the birds went, but then the rest of everything else came collapsing down around me like the house of cards that it was.
I mean, I don't have any more notes on the mechanics. I feel like maybe though we could talk about like do you have any thoughts on the levels themselves or like the maps?
Yeah. Not great ones, I'll say. I think of the design elements of this game, I really liked a lot of them. And the one to me that stood out was the maps. And once again, I might be feeling a little bit of that used to modern games and how they look. And I only know this for reasons I'll get into at the end. But it seemed like people they said it was colorful and nice when this game came out, like in the year 2000. But to me, everything seemed very annoying and bland. It was, there were just like big holes in the ground that were there for no reason. And it was just like, it made it so that, and I understand the utility of it in a real-time strategy game because you don't want to just have straight line paths to everything because it would make the combat and planning very boring. You need to like choose locations based on terrain and control them and set up some kind of bunker defense thing. But I found myself just walking in the third person and coming across a cliff and being like, oops, I give up, I guess. I have to turn and go somewhere else.
You're correct. I assume, yes, it is like that for mechanical reasons. But one thing I think is cool about the game is they have an in-game reason for it. Because like if you look at the map, the world map is like broken up into a bunch of little islands.
Right.
And like the idea is that like the world is like broken apart through events in the story. So like the fact that there's like big like craters in the ground is like justified through like narrative stuff.
Right.
I think it's a kind of a cool idea, but yeah, it can be inconvenient. Like there was a level where it was like maybe the second or third one. I was like in like a desert area and you were supposed to get over to the enemy shrine, and it was like really hard to figure out how to get there because there were just big craters.
Yeah, it's not intuitive to get around when there's big holes in the ground.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, obviously, you can use the map, but it does use the RTS typical fog of war system where you have to actually go somewhere before you know what's in the area.
Yeah.
So,
and
yeah.
it feels bad to like not know where to go because you're just like walking around in this
Aimlessly.
game. Yeah, aimlessly. Yeah, there isn't anything to do.
Yeah. I would always just end up like I would lay eyes on the like a fire from the mana fountains, and
Yeah.
would just make my way to those. That's just how I guided myself around it.
I think that's what you're
mostly
supposed
works.
to do. Yeah.
Yeah, it seems, but it compounds the issues that we had before with the third person system, is that you end up like just kind of wandering sometimes, and because the terrain isn't always cleared, you're not always looking ahead of you because the mini map is so there and so helpful, that I never wanted to like plan a route, and it would end up walking into cliffs, especially during fights that would just take place, and I would be on the edge of a cliff and be like, well, I guess my back's to the wall and I didn't know it until just now. But I don't know. They give you a couple of things to get around, like with the teleport spell, and it's sort of the guardian mechanic. You can assign a creature to guard a structure.
Yeah.
And then that sort of alerts you if somebody is attacking. So it'll be, oh, your creatures are being attacked.
Right.
Great. I'll teleport over there right away. And then I don't. And then it gets destroyed and I don't care. And this is why I lose the game. But yeah, I don't know. I found the maps to be, I mean, they're interesting looking for sure. But I don't think that they really, if it was a flat plane, I think with my level of like understanding of the game, I might not know the difference right now. You're like, I swapped out all the map files with just a gray square. I'd be like, I was crying. There were tears in my eyes. I couldn't see. I didn't know that you had done this.
To switch gears a bit,
Uh-huh.
when you started the game, did you think that the game was supposed to have a character creator?
Oh yeah.
And like spend like a couple minutes trying to like figure out how to edit the character?
Because there's like a button that says
Create character?
yeah.
Or new character, I think.
There's like a new character, and then there's like edit character, but it's just his name.
And select character. Yeah, you just type in a name, but it looks like it's set up like a character creator for an RPG.
Oh, it sure is.
And given that like you play as like a bug man in the tutorials, like I don't know, I thought there would be like different characters to choose from. At the very least.
Yeah, I did also think this, and was a little bit because the character Skelly, I don't remember what its name is.
Eldred is the main character's name.
Eldred?
Oh, you mean the bug?
Bug.
Oh, that I didn't write that name down.
Well, I also don't remember. I didn't remember Eldred either, so that was a good call.
Yeah, I figured I should write down the main character's name.
Yeah.
But no, the bug character's name started with an S. I don't remember.
Yeah, it was like SK or like ST. It had a Y in there.
Yeah.
I don't remember. But the bug character, is just a much cooler design than the current character, who just kind of looks like a lizard man.
I thought he looked like a character from like Soul Reaver or something.
Yeah, he could kind of be a Soul Reaver kind of guy,
Yeah.
which is appropriate because I named my version of the main character Soul Man.
I named mine Galgastone.
Perfect.
Uh-huh.
And yeah, I was also hoping like either a toggleable like choose, but this game took me by surprise in terms of like the player choice that it has in multiple ways. It's just in this case it was that I didn't have any. But it's fine because if I had known that the main character was voiced by Roy Campbell from Metal Gear Solid, I would have picked him anyway. Because dude's got a great voice.
Yeah, it felt like a very 2000s character design.
For sure, yeah.
I feel like if he's just like gray. I feel like if he had more colors in his color palette, it wouldn't be so bad.
That's true. I think that they did so much to like separate the gods by color.
Yeah, make him neutral.
Yeah, it was probably what they were thinking.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Makes a little bit of sense.
Yeah.
But like would have been cool if he was a little more fun to look at. Not that I had any fucking idea what he looked like, honestly. Like, this is such a
I don't.
game is so hard to play.
If you imagine the character from Soul Reaver and made him gray,
That would be this guy.
kind of.
Fair
He's
enough.
got that kind of energy. Like kind of like a demon-y looking guy.
He does have kind of a demon thing. And like the game talks about demons as well, but not in the context of your character. That even though he looks more like a demon than most other, I guess not Marduk, the dreaded.
Yeah.
Whose deal I never really got to figure out, but that's fine.
I did read the plot summary.
That's good.
Yeah, I kind of like it how all of the units and like the creatures looked a little bit fucked up.
True.
Like they looked a little bit demonic.
Oh yeah, some of the ones that I had, because I would say that I served only evil up until a midway. This counts as a mechanic. Halfway through the game, or maybe a little bit over half, I'm not actually sure. They play a audio drama. Some people talk.
There's a cutscene.
There's a cutscene, some dialogue, and then it says, "What will you do?" And then it says, "Nothing," or "I pledge myself to justice." And I was like, what does this mean? I was like thinking back on the cutscene I had just watched. And I was like, I don't think anyone asked me a question. And I don't want to just say, I'll do nothing. So sure, I pledge myself to justice, whatever. And what that apparently means is you no longer get to choose any gods except for Persephone or James. And then I picked James, and then the little thing that shows you the levels just auto-populated the rest of them with James. So I was only allowed to play James for the rest of the game. And so some of the units that I had, especially really early on, were just straight out of fucking D&D Monster Manual. Like, terrifying creatures of the nether realm come to reave souls, etc., etc. And then later on it was like, you got like a guy who throws a rock. And I was like, man, I like this creature design a lot less than the creepy fucked up demonic ones.
Yeah, I went in and I gravitated to Stratos. I thought it was interesting, like that it has like the whole setup with the gods, and I think they kind of like there's a lot of things that feel like intuitive or like well integrated into the design, where it's like obviously like a gradient spectrum, and Stratos is like the chaotic neutral one, who's also voiced by Tim Curry and seemed like the most fun.
Correct.
So
yeah.
I went for him, and a similar thing happened to me, but it was even before that choice came up. Like, I think I helped James twice in a row, and it was just kind of like locked me into his path. I don't know if it's really easy to side with James, with Earthworm Jim, but that happened to me too.
Yeah, it's weird how it locks you in, because like to me that was like one of the most appealing things about this game. Like,
yeah,
from
like it did it kind of like without dialogue. Like, it did it like organically, like which gods you choose influence the story, and it didn't like lampshade it.
Yeah, and it influences both the story and the mechanics, because you get the units and spells from the god that you're helping, so there's like multiple things pulling you in different directions. And so even though I went like pyro fucking Charnel, is that his name? Yeah, Charnel. It still ended up in the end locking me into one track, and it just feels so bad to do that.
Yeah.
Especially like without. I mean, I could have reloaded a save, but I would have had to have repeated a level, and I said no, sir.
I'm surprised that Pyro is the one you went with. I assumed it was Charnel when you said you went evil.
Well, I did. I was like Pyro, Charnel. And then I think I got locked into James after that.
Pyro is my least favorite character, and the only god I never picked.
I never picked Persephone or Stratus. I picked only the two that were on the red and black, which we do have to mention. I have to mention they did just jack the entire Magic the Gathering color wheel for this, the color pie, because we had the smart blue, the impulsive red, evil black, which is an oversimplification, but this is the Magic the Gathering podcast. Persephone, nature, green, and the peaceful one, James, is white. And it's literally just it's the fucking same. And I found that to be pretty funny. And I know that somebody there had to be a big Magic the Gathering fan. But yeah, I leaned toward the red and black side. And then it kind of just shunted me over into mono white, which is probably why I ended up leaving the game early.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. Pyro's got. I liked his voice a lot. Really, it's kind of what it was for me.
Yeah, I love that voice actor. He's the narrator for Baldur's Gate, so I am kind of attached to his voice. But like, I just found everything about the character unappealing.
You didn't like that he looked like the bad guy from Space Jam?
No, I did not like that he looked like Danny DeVito from Space Jam.
Well, then I thought I knew you. You know what? Here's what we're gonna have to do. We're gonna have to go to counseling and reconcile this issue, and then only then will we come back and talk about the themes and story of the game. So let's take a break. I fucked up.
Yep.
After the break, it's my turn.
It was like watching a train wreck in slow motion. I knew that was gonna happen.
Welcome back. So we talked a bit, and by a bit I mean for the entire first half, about the mechanics of the game, which we didn't fully understand, and we're bad at executing. We did not have the APM to properly micro and macro our way out of a paper bag.
Yeah. We're very much not RTS people. So, yeah, sorry.
So let's pivot to the shit that we know about, and that's cool characters and Brad Garrett. This game, the production value of this game, I bought this game for $2. The production value that I got for that $2 is far higher than I expected. Between the music and the actual, like, what it looked like for 2000, and the fact that it had all professional voice actors, most of whom were names that I knew, fucking destroyed my whole brain. I didn't expect that from this, and it was shocking, and I thought it was really, really spectacularly well done.
Yeah, I think like a lot of the elements of the game carry their own weight in a way that like you don't expect.
Yeah.
'Cause like I don't know if this would have been like a AAA release at the time, or not, but like the voice cast is incredible. What's his name? Marduk is voiced by the guy who voices Frollo in Hunchback of Notre Dame, the Disney movie, and he's like a famous actor. Like your parents probably would be able to tell you his name like that. But that was a surprise. He's got a great voice. So yeah, they've got a lot of like great talent, and this game has a quality that I feel like, I don't know if it was like, because I was thinking about this before we recorded, was like more common in older games, or if it's just like a nostalgic thing where you like only remember the good and interesting games
right
from times from days past,
For-
in the long ago. But like it feels like there's so many like creative ideas. Like it's just like brimming with like you could just tell that like everybody making this was just like so stoked to be doing it. Like they all put like, you know, cool ideas into the project. Because like, you know, we were kind of touching on it and on the first half, but like there's so many things that feel like kind of intuitive about the world, and like or it's just like well integrated into like I think this game has really great gameplay narrative integration for its time.
Yeah.
Like siding with a god and like that influencing the units you get and like the levels you do and like the trajectory of the story and stuff, like all just kind of happens. Like it doesn't have to be told to you, in a way that like I thought was really cool.
Yeah. And even more so than that, I was expecting the choice of God. I had multiple expectations that this game went against and did so in the best possible way. Like I thought choosing your god was going to be like a permanent thing. Like
Me too.
You pick somebody and that's who you're siding with for the entirety of the game. But you can choose each time, and they do it in a way that makes some amount of narrative sense as well, because they're just like, the gods have way too much going on to care what one individual person is doing. And that just like, they say it and it works and you never think about it again. You're like, makes sense. Now I can side with whoever I want to. I thought that when you chose a god, it was essentially choosing like a loadout, like, oh, I'll go pyro and I get all the fire minions or whatever. But it's additive. You're creating a build that you don't really have any meaningful knowledge of prior to going in, but whatever, who cares? And so you end up with like, it makes every playthrough of the game extremely varied, in a way that it's very rare for the time.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I think you play 9 or 10 missions in the campaign.
Yeah.
But there's a possible 45
total
to do.
Yeah. Which is crazy.
Yeah, which is pretty. Yeah, it's unexpected. Yeah, like I don't know if it's because we played Inscription, where you have to side with a character at like the midpoint of the game. But I thought the exact same thing. Like I went in, like after when I started playing, like I went to Stratos first because he seemed the most fun, to me. And I almost like got up and like came in and asked you which god you went with,
right?
But I didn't. And then was surprised that it was like you got to pick every time. Yeah, and it's like it's cool because you come back after the level to like the little god realm wherever they are,
the hub, whatever it is.
And like they're just like they're all like arguing about a different thing that's going on, and you get to pick a side again. In a way that's like really interesting.
Yeah. And it's interesting, narratively speaking, because it all sort of coalesces around an individual event. Like it is the RTS game formula is all about fighting battles, and winning multiple battles is what wins you the war or whatever. And that's how mechanically these games tend to play out. So it's interesting to see a game with that structure take a narrative that is, everyone is fighting these battles, but the battles are all feeding into this like prophecy, and that is the thing that eventually is going to be the deciding factor as to like who comes out on top in each individual thing.
Yeah, and it works out because like there is like an apocalyptic kind of style event, and like the world is just like shattered to pieces, like kind of literally.
Yeah.
And they're just like all fucking squabbling to grab power, which works well with like the genre and like the story they've set up.
Right. Meanwhile, your character, who you actually play as, has like a personal issue with somebody who is not even one of the gods, not even really affiliated with them, which is this comical bat demon looking thing called Marduk. And I don't really know what his deal was other than you had an oath. You broke a promise. and he's there to extract his payment from you.
From my understanding, your character is from like a different world or like universe or whatever from this one, and in your home universe had its own apocalyptic style event, or like because like you were like the ruler of it or whatever, and you like everyone was like conspiring against you to like kill you, and you summoned Marduk to like kill your opposition, and it went horribly wrong,
as it does,
and your universe is destroyed, and you find yourself in this one.
Right. So yeah, and that ends up playing in like your character sort of brings Marduk's the attention of the gods to the existence of Marduk and how he's a powerful being and all that. And so you do end up with this like it does just they give you this excuse at the beginning that the gods aren't going to care what you do because you're such a minor character, but then it ends up building into a thing where eventually they do have to pay attention to the thing that you've brought into their world, which I don't know. I find it interesting, maybe less so because of like just the implication of the narrative. Like it's something that I could imagine having been done before in a way that I'm just not like connecting to an immediate example, but just because I like the characters a lot.
Yeah. I mean, it doesn't, it's very back burner, so it's easy to kind of forget about. Because it's relevant at the beginning and then in the middle and then at the end, you know.
Right. Yeah, you get a Act 1, Act 2, Act 3 reminder of the plot.
So yeah, it's easy to forget about. So yeah, it doesn't like engage you as much moment to moment. But in the end, though, Stratus ends up being the bad guy, who was aware of Marduk the whole time and was using him or whatever, and he was actually disguised as Mithras, the character from the beginning. It was like I don't know if he's your friend.
He's the blind seer.
Yeah. But yeah. So a formerly friendly person ends up being the bad guy. So all cool twists, I think. For what it is. Yeah, because like I initially expected the story to just be kind of like generic when I first started the game, but like I think it's actually like a pretty solid story, and it's got like cool world building, and like it's really supported by like everything else, I think. And when you have all those cool details, like usually sometimes like a simple story is the best approach to take.
Yeah, where a lot of the other elements of this game make up for their lack of complexity with a lot of depth. It's like you can do things in a million different ways, like just combinatorially. The narrative of the game makes up for its lack of depth with a million shitload of conversations that you can listen to. Because there are so many different combinations of things that the player can do, you end up going through. You can get a bunch of different versions of the story told to you, and even if like the outcome is always the same, the actual like trip there is always new information, and I think that is very cool.
Yeah.
And it saves it a bit from being a little bit bland. So
yeah.
definitely works out.
Yeah, I don't even, maybe it's like hair splitting, but I don't even think it really like lacks depth. Or it doesn't have a ton of depth, but I don't think that's the problem so much as it's like a lack of engagement.
Yeah, that's probably what it's not so much that the story doesn't have depth, it's more that it's not the focus of the game. So you don't get to see a whole lot of it. That doesn't have to do with like, oh, this guy built a weapon on a rock over here, go blow it up. Like, yeah, that's technically story content, but it's not. You're just explaining to me that gun is not good for me.
Yeah. Like, I wish that I would have had like more time to actually play through multiple paths. Like, I'm wondering if it's all possible to like manipulate the alliances between the gods and stuff.
Right. That would be a very deep cut thing that I don't know.
Because like I know like it was weird because like I know early on I went to what's like the masochistic evil god's name?
Charnel.
Charnel. Like I went to him like one time, and that like blocked me off from like Persephone.
Right. Yeah.
And I wonder like if that's like at all like manipulatable if you've played the game a few times for like different story paths.
Yeah. I mean, I would hope at least the choice of God is. Because, like, I don't wish my fate upon anyone where you get stuck only being able to help fucking TV's Brad Garrett for the rest of your existence.
Yeah, it's kind of weird that it shoehorns you into, like, a good ending.
Yeah.
It's like, this seems like the kind of game, and, like, maybe this is from, like, a more modern lens, but like that would really lean into multiple endings, and it seemed like it tried to minimize that.
Yeah. I mean, it's one of those things like, I feel like I don't think that it's a modern perspective thing, because I mentioned good and evil before. Editor's note, every time from here on out that I say the phrase good and evil, I'm referring to the game Heaven and Hell, proving that I really don't know anything at all about strategy games. And now that I'm thinking about it, I don't actually know. I've never played Good and Evil, and I don't know if it is an RTS or if it's a turn-based strategy. It is a strategy game of some kind. But I know that game lets you choose freely between the titular good and evil, as you might imagine.
Right.
So it's not like it would have been unprecedented for them to give you the options. And obviously you do have them as long as you commit.
Yeah, it just
but
feels
if you
like...
break off, it wants to throw you into a hole.
Yeah, it
named
feels
James.
like feels like it's begging for a different ending for each god.
Yeah. But then they make Stratus the villain at the
guy,
end at all times. So
also, I guess spoilers for Inscription.
I was gonna bring this up earlier. I didn't want to spoil Inscription.
Yeah, so spoilers for Inscription. Seriously, Inscription's a great game. Look it up if it seems even a little bit interesting. Pause this and go play it. Or skip ahead a couple minutes.
If you hit the skip... Oh, what are you going to do? I was going to say hit the skip ahead 15 seconds button once.
Just to make sure. It's all I'm saying. But it's interesting that it's the blue character. Like as you compared it to Magic the Gathering, it's like the character that's represented by the color blue is like the smart, like the intelligence themed one that ends up being the bad guy.
Yeah, in both games.
Yeah.
I'm fucking anti-intellectual. These games are problematic and need to be stopped. But no, I think there's sort of a thing about that. I feel like this is a trope that we could sort of like work out, like why Stratos ends up being the villain here, because they are engaged in war. So first of all of them are bad, I guess, except James. He doesn't want to be doing war.
Yeah, like the neutral stance, it feels like relatable to the average person.
Yeah. And because he's the smartest one, most likely to be hiding something.
Yeah.
All smart people are constantly engaging in subterfuge. This is a true fact. But yeah, I mean, it would have been cool if if you were able to, through the choices you make as to which levels you play, sort of get an ending that doesn't always have to be the same, or at least the same. Like,
yeah, I'm curious, like what happens if you choose to do nothing. Like maybe there are more endings that I'm imagining, but it kind of seems like they lean into the narrative they've written. So I think they kind of funnel you towards a specific, a more set in stone conclusion.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'd agree. And I do wish there's a little bit more. Or do I? Because I didn't finish the game once. I hypothetically agree with you.
Yeah.
What did you think about... And I realize that this is a weird time to be bringing it up.
It's all good.
What did you think about the tutorial of this game? Because it also sort of put me on my ass in a totally different way that I liked. So,
it's definitely an interesting part of the game. At first, like when you look at the menu and it's like tutorial 1, tutorial 2, tutorial 3, you're like, oh god. You start getting like Blitzball flashbacks. But like I think it's interesting. I like it when a game like makes a tutorial like kind of like fun or like its own little thing. Like this game does. Like you get your little familiar character that's like that talks you through everything. And it is a little long, but like it was appreciated for me because I don't fucking know anything about RTSs. So I thought it taught the mechanics decently well. But yeah, like something like we highlighted on the first half, like it would have been nice to like get a little bit more information on what the different units do. But like I think it covered the basics like pretty well.
Yeah, I think that the tutorial...
And it was intriguing, I think.
It was.
Yeah.
Because it keeps you not entirely sure what the main game is going to be. Like, if you know what the main game is when you go in, it's like playing the tutorial is just like another level of the game, but just with a constant voiceover the whole time.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I think that the tutorial sort of like funnels people toward choosing Persephone as their god, especially early on. Her units are really easy to understand what they do, and so it ends up being... It's like it's easy to see what's happening, and so you choose Persephone, and she ends up being more of a tutorial. Probably a little bit easier. I don't know. I never chose her. But the tutorial itself, I didn't know that like there's going to be a different character for the main game. I still thought there might be a character creator because I was like, what's this four-armed weirdo doing here? I love that. I want more of it. But then I walked into the tutorial, started moving around a little bit, and run into the familiar, and I'm like, no fucking way that this is fully voice acted. Like, they got a guy in a studio to be like, fucking, you can click on the mini-map with the middle mouse button, or if you don't have a middle mouse button, hold down the control key and scroll in and out. And I'm like, they're explaining the alternate key bindings to me in a real human being's voice that goes over 3 tutorials. And I was like, they were very committed to this tutorial to make it all there. And you go through the whole thing, and yeah, I agree. It's very helpful for the most part. There are a few things that they just say to do, and there's a system in the game called waypointing where you can tell a group to do something, and then do something else, and they'll do it in sequence. Fuck me, I have no idea how. I tried following the instructions and didn't get it.
I couldn't figure it out either.
It's so weird, right?
Yeah.
Like, I was like, I swear to God, I'm doing exactly what you're telling me to do. And it didn't explain, and it just didn't work.
Yeah, I just moved on.
Yeah, so I just walked away. There's another part in one of the tutorials, I think in the second one, where it was like, now select all of your units. But apparently I left a unit somewhere behind.
Oh, yeah.
I started walking around. And I was like, hold on. So I just scrolled out the mini-map and just selected the whole thing to go in. It's like, the tutorial is great, but it has to hinge on the player understanding what it's teaching it. Otherwise, it will break. And I don't hate that. Like, it's asking a lot to get this much information into the head of a new player, because if you don't understand RTS games, there's a lot of this shit that you're going to be like, why does this matter at all? Which is sort of what I said, but except I said, I hope this doesn't matter at all, because I'm not grasping it. So I was really impressed with the tutorial. I really was, and I thought that the fact that it was all voice acted was shocking to me.
Yeah, like, I think like exactly what you were just talking about is probably the reason why. Like, it's really important to teach all this to the player, and like having like a charming voice deliver it to you.
Yeah,
it makes it much less likely you're gonna skip all of it. Yeah, but it some reason didn't stand out to me as like exception or like unusual in any way. It something about it just feels so like 2000s like Western PC game to me. I don't know why. Like it did, the fact that like all these voice actors were in the game like felt like a pleasant surprise. Like I was glad it was all there, but it somehow felt like not surprising that it was all included at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about most of the voice actors that we've mentioned already. The voice actor for Pyro and for Marduk and for fucking Gilgamesh. What's your fucking main character's name?
Oh, Eldred.
Galgaston. Galgastons are mostly video game voice actors. They're people who have put in work before, and we've seen Tim Curry before in Red Alert, delivering his classic line about capitalism in space.
Yeah, but he also he did a voice in Brutal Legend as well.
That's true.
Another real-time strategy game.
Yeah, which also uses celebrity voices, just cause.
Yeah.
But that's more of a Double Fine thing. But yeah, for us going back, like it is a pleasant surprise, and it is their voices we recognize for a reason, I guess.
Yeah.
I guess I was surprised to find out that this game had the production value that it did.
Yeah, no, yeah, me too. Yeah, like there is something about booting up the tutorial, like because like you just told me like a brief description of what this game was. I then forgot about it, and then you were like, "You want to do Sacrifice?" And I was like, "What was that?" And you're like, "Oh, it's like this RTS," and I'm like, "Oh yeah, that one. Yeah, let's do that." So I knew nothing. So yeah, like booting it up and being like this weird bug man, like running around and like this like the epitome of like a 2000s computer game environment with like this little like owl guy like delivering, like you're just like, yeah, it's like you didn't know what you were in for. Like it felt like mysterious and interesting,
and that's not saying anything about the UI of the game.
Yeah.
Which also just like screams old computer game. Your cursor is like a little hand.
Yeah, but like not too bad though. Like
it's not a bad UI.
all like readable. But I mean, like a lot of older games, you look at it and you're like, this is so ugly, or like this is fairly unintuitive. I didn't realize I could click there. Shit like that.
And the fact that the tutorial is split into 3 parts is on the main menu.
Yeah, but it'll link them all together if you just play it.
That's true. Yeah. But it is funny to me still.
Yeah.
that it is all there.
And yeah, it makes it feel more imposing.
Yeah, and there's no sub menu for it at all. They're just like, you gotta do, and they're long too. Mm-hmm. So you get, I don't know. Yeah, that's basically it for me. It's just like, I think I was very surprised by this game in a lot of different ways, and most of them very positive. So, that's good. It's a good thing. So, why do you think Stratos had a balloon for a head?
I think actually because he's like the neutral one. It's like he goes wherever the wind takes him.
Okay, that
like
could
he's
be.
like wind themed.
He is wind.
He's got like a balloon for a head.
He's always got his head in the clouds.
All that too, a little bit, I guess.
His lofty ideals.
He's got a big head. You know,
he's got
he can blow it
it
up, fill it
inflates.
with more air.
Yeah, he's got an inflated ego.
Airheads are out of control.
They are Stratos. He's out of control.
I also I thought it was interesting, like the way that they were like animated, like your little circle would come up in the center of the screen, and like they would have like a little animation as they talked.
Yeah,
like there was like something about the way they were rendered or the way they were lit made them like look weird and like in a cool way. Especially Persephone, like she looked like weird when she'd pop up.
I agree with that she was especially odd. It gave me Myst because of
like talking through a little window at you.
Yeah, I think it must have been. This is just like an era of technology that I am just entirely unfamiliar with. But there must have been a reason why putting animated things in boxes
in a little window, was
just easier on the systems, because it it does show up in old PC games where
Yeah,
it's always that.
At the very least, like with a 3D model, like it is in this game, which versus Myst, where it was like live or it was like a FMV.
Yeah.
Like that's less animation you have to do. Like anything that's outside the frame can just be
Static.
in a T-pose.
T-pose.
Yeah.
So I guess that makes sense.
Yeah.
Did you like the designs? We kind of already said this.
Yeah, I think that it's actually pretty interesting though, because they all kind of have a different look, like almost like they were kind of pulled from a different game, but like in a way that works.
Yeah,
I think like James is the one that stands out the most. I think just being an earthworm. It's like a clear reference to Earthworm Jim. I didn't even know this studio is the studio that made Earthworm Jim,
right?
And I picked up on that immediately. So I thought like he's the only one that felt like a little much, but like I think it all like there's some kind of glue that's holding it all together. Like Stratos is a guy with a balloon head,
true,
and it like somehow doesn't feel like it clashes or doesn't fit.
Yeah, I think like because they are supposed to represent such different things, like different ideals. That probably aids in the fact that them looking different doesn't really clash with your understanding of the game. In fact, the fact that we first mentioned that it was weird that they were in little circles.
Yeah.
Before we said
help,
it's weird that they have a balloon for a head or whatever.
Yeah.
I think it's a testament to the design being actually pretty good. It's not like for nothing.
Yeah, like they're like a pantheon of gods, so like they all feel like larger than life and like big like like manifestations of like different ideas. Like I guess it makes sense for them to all like look very different from each other.
Right. Well, unless you wanted to talk about the music or something.
No, I can't say I really remember what the music sounded like.
Yeah, no, they had a couple of bangers in there, but it wasn't anything like.
It did its job.
Yeah, somebody out there is probably a big Sacrifice.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah,
music fan. It's on YouTube playlist.
Yeah, I think that's just something that I've like learned about music. Is that like
key matters?
Yeah, yes, key matters. I learned that in like 5th grade. But if it exists, like there's someone's probably a huge fan of it. I mean, that's true of like most things, but like music, it tends to be like even stuff that you find like kind of like unremarkable. Somebody is like, this is the best song I've ever heard.
That is true.
I think especially with video games, because like the fact that they're playing the whole time that you're playing the game, like you can get attached to them.
Yeah. Plus, people have a tendency to sort of put too much importance on games in their lives generally.
Yeah.
There's more of an identity to it, I think maybe is a reason. This is just kind of general talk about music while I try and think of an F word to use at the end. What about, do we have desecrated thoughts?
You know, I was thinking the exact same thing, so let's go with it. My desecrated thoughts. This, and I don't mean this is a bad thing at all, but was the hardest game I think to talk about for this podcast, probably since Portal, which was hard for completely different reasons.
Yeah.
Because it was the 10th episode, and we didn't know what to say about a game that we all respected a lot at the time.
It's true.
But yeah, so this is a game, probably, I guess it's the first one we've done that, like, no one on the podcast, like, it was outside of everybody's comfort zone.
Yeah,
like,
fully.
Usually, like, one of us is like, into the game if the other person is, like, completely out of their league with it. So yeah, like both of us coming at this from just as complete outsiders. And So yeah, it makes it hard to kind of like say whether or not, like, as I said on the first half, like I don't know if this game's really like any good or not. Like if people who like RTSs would like this, but I think it's like incredibly cool. It's very unique, and it has a lot of interesting ideas. And I really like that. It has a third person camera perspective and like a character you actually play as, but at the same time, I think that like hurts the gameplay as well. Um, Personally, I don't know if people who are really good at it might be able to defend it. I don't know, but yeah, like it feels like the third person kind of clashes with the genre, but I think it's cool. Like this, I feel like there was more genre experimentation around this time. Things weren't quite as like set in stone as they are these days. Um, so yeah, like, I think it's really cool that this game exists. It's got a lot of great things going on, great voice cast, a lot of little details. Like it gets a lot of those little like world building details and things right that I think like elevate a game. So yeah, it's got a lot of stuff going for it, but it's just very much not the sort of thing I would ever play. So it's really hard to summarize what I think about it. I'm glad that I've played it. I appreciate like a cool, unique game, but I think I need to dump a lot more time into it to really be able to say like if I'd recommend it to somebody or something like that. So that's what I think about Sacrifice.
All right. I fucking mostly agree with that. I did something for this episode that I don't normally do. I'm gonna say don't normally. I would love to say don't ever, but I probably have at some point. And I wanted to see what other people were saying about this game, and they weren't. It's nobody's really talking about this, which makes sense. The game came out 23 years ago. It's the only game in a series. It's not like it's a big franchise that people can glom onto. And so obviously I'd never heard of it until it was suggested. And so like looking back at it from that angle, a lot of the reviews at the time were very positive. I believe most of the reviews that were written more recently are also positive, but it's just not something that outside of, I assume, certain RTS circles, I really have ever heard anyone talk about. And to me, that this game being a $2 game that is sort of a simplified version of RTS systems in this colorful, weird, strange, and surprising package, and it not being very long, but if you do like it, it has a ton of depth to dig into, with multiple runs through and the multiplayer, assuming you can find anyone to play it with.
I think it has local multiplayer.
That's, well, you'll have to get at least one person in your immediate household to also enjoy the game. I think with that, to me, that's enough of a recommendation, but like only if you're either an RTS person already or are looking to get into them or just want to give them a try. Like, I think Sacrifice is actually a very cool starting place for the RTS genre because you have no expectations going in, except now you've listened to the whole podcast and know everything about it. But like you go in, there's a stigma when you pick up a StarCraft game, because it's been being played for 20 years and everybody knows everything there is to know about it. Sacrifice is a clean slate. And I think I would recommend it to people if this is something that they were looking to try. So, thank you for listening to No Clip this week.
What are we talking about next time?
Next time, we're going to be talking about Gunfire Reborn. I had to pause for a second because I forgot, but we're here now. Yeah. It's a roguelike FPS game. I don't know too much about it other than it's colorful.
I know absolutely nothing about it.
Hell yeah.
Fanbruary, baby. Going in blind.
Going in to Farch.
Yes, this one will be coming out in Farch.
This is definitely, this will be a Farch game, but don't let that deter you. For I don't know if I can, whatever. It's until that time, you can get a hold of us. All of our contact information is on our website at noclippodcast.com. There you can find links to our Twitter, our Discord, where you can suggest your own games for us to play. You can find our email address, our YouTube channel, and all of our old episodes, including ones on the Return of the Obra Dinn.
Inscription.
Inscription.
I brought it up twice.
Hell yeah. Earthworm Jim. Oh, not yet. Forget about that one. We certainly haven't talked about Earthworm Jim yet.
We played other games where you align with a deity.
Ooh. Elden
Probably.
Ring.
It's very similar to this.
Yeah.
I don't know. Fire Emblem. That's like
That we did play that.
a tactics game.
What about Final Fantasy X, where you fight a whale?
Goodbye.
You said Blitzball earlier.
Smash that like button.
I always want it louder than it has ever been. If we incrementally notched it up a little bit, I'd be happy.
The worry is if you go too high, then especially you start to clip all the time.
What's that supposed to mean?
You know what it means.